love coming to the King's Root. I've been coming for 2 years, a little over 2 years, I think now. And before we got married even, and felt that I was called here to be here. And I find great encouragement from coming here every month and being a part of the King's Council also. So thank you for coming this morning. We okay back there? Okay. There we go. We have a lot of information to get through this morning. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with ACEs. We're going to go over that in just a minute, but I want to draw your attention to what's on your table. So I came up with this idea, and I will give total credit to my amazing husband, Dr. Mark Cannizzaro over here, for making it happen and putting them all together. He spent a couple hours last night making sure we had everything and went to the store a couple times and put them all together for me while I was finishing prepping. And so you have a fidget in here feel free to use it. I mean, I understand that sometimes it's difficult to concentrate when, slide after slide and people are talking and it becomes blah, 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 blah in your head. Feel free. So there's also some candy and mints and paper and pen to take notes if you so desire. And then my business card, that little thing in there is my business card. So Pivot Professional Consulting, that is new for me. Has anybody heard of ACEs, the ACE study, ACE survey, or the Michigan ACE initiative? Raise your hands. A few. Okay. And I'm sure, Andrea, you're very familiar with that. Thank you for being here. We're going to go over what ACEs is and the impact of childhood trauma today. I want to start out in prayer, though. Oh, thank you, Lord. You are so good. So, so good. And Lord, all that we know is but just a tiny bit compared to all that you know. And us thinking that we can fit you into all that we do in our lives. Oh my God, you created the universe. We fit into your world. Thank you, Lord, that this little bit that we do know, God, today, and that some may be hearing for the first time. Father, I ask that you open our capacity this morning to hear, to see, to absorb. And God, that you would do the healing in our own lives and in our communities that you so desire to do. In Jesus' name, amen. So there is a lot of information that I'm going to share. Some of it you will may hear for the first time. Some of you may have some aha moments. Some of you may, and it's normal. This is all normal for you to may feel triggered, and you don't know why. I'm going to tell you right now why, because we all have some childhood trauma. Most people do. There is something that will make you think about it. And if that happens, it's okay. We will take a break or two, depending on how things go. And if you're feeling triggered, totally okay to get up and walk out. If you want somebody to talk to, my husband, Dr. Mark Cannizzaro, is a clinical psychologist. He will talk to any men. Andrea is here to talk to any women, if you so desire. If not, and you just want to get up and go to the bathroom, no worries. I mean, it's totally cool. But that is also why you have some of the things on your table there. And my phone number and email address is on the back of that business card. Feel free to text or email me even during this if you would like to. I will check it on break and then afterwards. So there are definitely some supports for you. So a little bit about me though. Sorry, I got to make sure he can see me so that he can move me on. Nope. There we go. This is one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou. This is a wonderful day. I've never seen it before. Each new day is a new day with no mistakes in it. That's what I like to say. Drive my kids crazy with that, actually. So here are some pictures of my family. You may not know. This handsome guy on the left here is my oldest son. He is a Marine. The one with the shot put there, that is my middle child. The first one over here is Jacob. Then Zach is the one with the shot put, and he throws shot and discus for Northwood University. He's on track scholarship there. And then right next to him is my amazing daughter, Elena, and her dog, Jax. And she is working currently and saving money to get her own place. And there's just some pictures of us, and of course my husband and my children. So just a little bit about me. Now, Mark gave you a bio about me, but something that's not in that bio, a couple things. One is I'm also a certified professional coach and have been for 2.5 years. What makes me an expert in at least this information that I'm sharing, although there's always lots to learn, is I am a certified Michigan ACE Community Champion. And basically that means I'm a presenter for the Michigan ACE Initiative since 2018 and was part of the very first cohort of community champions or presenters. I saw the need really early on, as soon as this started actually, for awareness among adults in the workplace, employers and business leaders. And typically this information that you're going to hear was shared mostly with those who work with children and regarding prevention, which is amazing, and we need that. But very, very few were talking about it in the workplace, those who work with adults, in human services even. That wasn't seen as important. I joined the Clare County Trauma Awareness Steering Committee right away when they started, and everybody there worked with children but me. So moving forward, they are now grasping that, and more is being done among adults. So amazing. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. The Michigan ACE Initiative is managed by the Michigan Association of Health Plans Foundations. And it is focused on expanding efforts towards creating statewide awareness of adverse childhood experiences. The more people who know, the better we will be. You don't know what you don't know. So, developing recommendations of appropriate interventions in state policy, and development and implementation of the new state Medicaid policy that enables the use of the ACE screening tool as children receive health screenings and services. So some of these slides a lot of this is copyrighted material owned by the Michigan ACE Initiative. So just an FYI. Okay. Real quick, if you, in just a minute here, receive a text, please take a look at it. I mean, raise your hand if you get it when you get it. Oh, there we go. Yay, it worked. So this is, what is your current state of mind? So use the link, and it's an anonymous survey to let us know. And then it actually is going to send me the results. It won't tell me who or anything. It will just let me know how everybody's feeling. Be honest about it. If you're feeling yucky, it's okay. So far, everybody, let's see, we have almost 70% of people saying loving it, and 30 saying I'm good. Awesome. Thank you for doing that. So, a couple goals that we have for this presentation. We're going to create awareness. We already kind of talked about that, about ACE's research and findings and implications. how they develop, how it impacts brain development. We're going to look at and understand the impact of ACEs, how they, the effect they have on our own lives. That's very important. You can't use it for others if you're not willing to look at yourself. We're going to gain awareness and learn techniques for responding to the emotional response of others with respect, empathy, and in a non-judgmental way. So these may be people you work with, people that work for you, in your family, friends. And then we're going to look at approaches for creating resilience and safety necessary for trauma-sensitive learning and working environments. Next. There you go. So NEAR is just a way for us to organize this content, and it stands for neuroscience, epigenetics, adverse childhood experiences, and resilience. And we're going to go over a bit of all of it today. What if the largest health discovery of our time was about the smallest among us? From that first spark of life, as cells divide and form a tiny beating heart, a fragile skeletal structure, a central nervous system, the experience of being in relationship with another person and with the world around us has profound impacts on who we are and who we will become. Although we can recall and describe with words much of what's happened in our lives, the memory of human experience is stored in our bodies and not just in our minds. Today, we're going to talk about the findings from the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. We call it the ACE study. So you may have heard of it. The ACE study confirms with scientific evidence that adversity early in life increases physical, mental, and behavioral problems later in life. The ACE study is the largest study of its kind with over 17,000 participants. It was co-sponsored by Kaiser Permanente, which is a managed healthcare consortium in San Diego, California, and later it was picked up by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia in the early 90s. Dr. Vincent Felitti and Dr. Rob Anda are the co-principals investigators of the ACE study, and Dr. Anda, who designed the ACE study, reviewed and approved all the information from the study in this presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about the brain and the human nervous system. The human central nervous system connects us to ourselves, to other people, and to the world around us. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord that integrate all of our senses and information from receptors located throughout the body. It regulates internal body functions and manages elaborate chemical and electrical signaling. The nervous system considers sensory input in the context of each and every second, which I find is amazing. God made our bodies, our brains, so amazing. Almost instantaneously, and determines our understanding of and response to the world we live in. Cells in the nervous system are called neurons. So you're getting a little bit of a science lesson this morning. Hang with me just for a minute. It won't last long. They are stunningly effective at processing and transmitting information, and they have a central purpose in doing so, to adapt in ways that keep us alive and safe. Dr. Martin Teicher of Harvard University reviewed and approved all the brain science facts in this presentation. So, again, a little more science, but bear with me. Actually, I think you'll find out a lot about yourself and your children. So, on the far left, we see a set of brain cells, or neurons, and what they might look like at the time of birth. There's not much there. You can figure out why. There's not a lot of connections yet. There are many connections between these cells at birth. Babies are born with only the connections and brain functions they need at that point in life. Most of the wiring of our brain occurs as the result of life experience from our senses. By age 6, those same brain cells now have many connections. The wiring of the brain, or the making of complex neural networks, is experience dependent. What gets experienced the most tends to lead to more connections between nerve cells that form networks. This is called branching or arborization. The last section of the slide, on the far right over there, represents age 14. How many have had teenagers? And you can yes. We're like, yes, that is them. What happened to their brain? About the time of puberty. Notice that there are now fewer connections between the brain cells than there were at age 6. This is because the least experienced connections tend to withdraw and just disappear at about the time of puberty. This process is called pruning. This phenomenon helps to explain why neglect or not getting the experiences we need can have such a powerful negative impact on health and social functioning. Can you see that? If you don't have those connections, if you didn't have those connections when you were little, by the time you're a teenager, you have less than the normal. Every person's life is unique. Sorry. I keep forgetting to shake my head at him. Thank you, David. Okay, there we go. Every person's life is unique. But for illustration, let's imagine 2 worlds. One is mean and dangerous. Can you figure out which one that is? The top there. The second is kind and generous. Traumatic experience during development, like abuse, neglect, and chaotic relationships, generates predictable patterns of brain architecture, behavior, and traits. Being under stress for about 20 minutes at a time, long enough to prepare for a fight or to hide, is usually the limit for the human brain. So experiences that cause stress chemicals to be continuously produced, for example, child abuse, neglect, or even being in a war zone, have a big impact on development. Under these circumstances, our bodies tend to prepare for life in a dangerous world. Stress hormones exert influence on cells, chemicals, and wiring. They sculpt brains that are wired for certain circumstances, like being edgy, hot-tempered, impulsive, hypervigilant, or being withdrawn, disassociated, or numb. As I'm saying this, I'm sure you're thinking either of people you know or maybe yourself. That's okay. It should. I mean, this is good information to self-awareness, and awareness of our surroundings is good. This is the path outlined on the top line of the slide. For example, people who have had traumatic stress from conception to the toddler years will likely have a higher baseline of the stress hormone cortisol in their bodies. As a result, these folks may have a very short fuse, be self-focused, and may have a difficult time shifting gears from emotion to problem solving. That's huge, actually, huge. If there's more danger, but imagine this. So this is why. If there's more danger just around the corner, being focused on others and thinking through options wouldn't contribute to survival. So that gets pushed aside. I mean, our brains do it automatically. But instead, they're always ready for the next danger that could come about. The downside is that when stress hormones, like cortisol, hang around for a long time, they are toxic to brain cells. This toxicity includes making it difficult for brain cells to develop healthy neural networks and can even cause brain cells to die. That is why we call continuous stress trauma and episodic, unpredictable stress toxic stress. Dr. Teicher calls the lower path in this diagram the benevolent world path. The world is kind, easygoing, helpful, and free from traumatic stress. Which, wouldn't that be nice? I don't know, does anybody have a life that's totally free from any stress? Okay, yeah. So, next. It's not wanting to move. Well, while he's doing that, what kind of situations might be a good match for a person who tends to be edgy, hypervigilant, emotionally detached, or quick to act? How might these kinds of adaptations be useful in our environment? Anybody? Now, it doesn't mean if you're a fireman that you have lots of trauma, but it seriously could be. So any situations that you could see that it's somebody who is hyper-vigilant, edgy, emotionally detached, quick to act without having to think, what kind of things would be good for them? Police officers, very true. Military. Anybody else? Yeah. Yep. Frontline health workers, for sure. One common belief in our society is that the people whose experiences take them on the top path, on that last slide, are maladaptive, and the people along the bottom path are adaptive. That's not true at all. So I want you to put that to rest. It's not true at all. Both pathways are adaptive. Both brains are adapting to their experience. And that's good for us as a species. The people whose brains adapt to a dangerous or stressful world are more likely to survive when life is tough. Now think about it. Would you rather be with somebody who needs a committee to make a decision when your life is in danger, or somebody who can sum it all up real quick and make a quick decision? So it's not like one is worse than the other, or bad, or we learn from each other. The people whose brains adapt to a safe world are likely to be prepared to meet society's expectations in tranquil times. So it's all about expectations. Our experience gets wired into our biology. Next. There we go. It's when our biology collides with social expectations that we run into trouble. If you put a person from the benevolent world into the chaotic and turbulent environment of, say, riot control, that person may struggle unless he has learned some very specific skills. Likewise, a child adapted to a dangerous, stressful world may not sustain patience. He or she may not share, cooperate, or use words as a first choice. My husband can attest to that. So you probably have your own stories, but my husband grew up, I'm just going to share a little bit about us in this. He grew up with 2 teachers as parents, and they were strict. He knew where his parents were all the time. They knew where he was. His dad taught actually biology at his own high school, so he couldn't do anything without his parents knowing. And so very adaptive, very, just what we would consider normal middle class. I did not grow up that way. I grew up with an alcoholic father, and my mom had a lot of trauma in her background, and so my life was chaotic. Now, in adulthood, I'm great when it comes to having to make quick decisions and doing things on the fly, or like totally preparing and then, going, oh, okay, that's not going to work, or plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. That doesn't bother me. I'm like, okay, yep, next plan. My husband, on the other hand, he will always make sure we're on time and have everything prepared a week ahead, which I am extremely grateful for, because I'll be like, where's my water? That kind of thing. But he always keeps us on track. But when it comes to things changing quickly or whatever, he's not. So anxiety happens. So you can see even in our marriage, how it works great for us, but just the differences in people. I'm sure you have all of your own stories similar. Let's take a closer look at one of the factors that determines the effects of maltreatment: age. Why would the age of a person at the time of maltreatment have a powerful effect? Anybody? Right. Yep. The brain develops in a sequence from most primitive to most advanced. Think about it. A tiny baby doesn't need to be able to write a paper or pass a math test, but she does need to breathe, eat, regulate body temperature, sleep, and connect with someone who will nurture and protect her. So the parts of the brain that control internal body functioning and ability to connect to a primary caregiver develop earliest. Brain regions that control complex complex thought processes like abstract writing and math aren't fully developed until later in childhood. And so continues a magnificent dance, God is so cool, of experience and adaptation generating age-appropriate capacities for feeling, thinking, and responding to the world around us. As the brain develops, there are sensitive periods for each brain region when the size and functional abilities of the region are most affected by experience and are most vulnerable to toxic stress. Now, this will all make sense as we move forward here a little bit. New abilities build on the growth and development from earlier months and years. I mean, it's just like learning anything. When you first start, you know nothing and you're terrible at it. And as you get going, you get better. Unless you're one of those people who are just good at everything when you start. I have a child like that. Over time, elaborate systems of specialized brain regions develop that help us to navigate increasingly complex environments. Thank you. Toxic stress in early childhood has profound effects on brain structures and functions that develop later in childhood. These functions include the mediation of emotional response, social interaction, and abstract thinking. That's why people say that early childhood is so important, and they're right. But early childhood isn't the only sensitive development period, according to the latest research. This I find really cool. God just, again, the way he designed our brains is amazing. The brain research that has been introduced, although accurate, is simplified and limited in scope. Each brain region has sensitive periods when experiences have powerful effect on the brain, on brain mass and functioning. For example, during middle childhood, around ages 7 to 13, emotional and verbal abuse can affect the centers for processing sound. Now again, ages 7 to 13. Emotional and verbal abuse can affect the centers for processing sound, developing verbal language, and perceiving social cues. Effects can be different for boys than for girls. For example, both neglect and sexual abuse affect boys and girls. But neglect is in infancy and through the toddler years for boys has a large effect on cross-brain communication. While cross-brain communication is profoundly affected in girls, it's around the ages of 7 to 10 when it comes to sexual abuse. Now, that doesn't mean that doesn't affect them terribly at any age. It's just more so, it says, at these ages. By the time we reach our mid-late to late 20s, our central nervous system with the brain as its command center orchestrates everything from our automatic body functions like breathing and heartbeat to complex goal-oriented behavior and abstract analytical thinking. The elaborate signaling systems in our brain is well practiced. In a fraction of a second, it determines whether sensory information from sight, sound, touch, taste, or smell should come into the brain and be processed, or whether the information must be filtered out in favor of survival. I don't know, anybody here, especially sometimes moms, like you can filter out sound? Like, really good? When needed? Yeah. It's because our brains are determining what's important and what's not at the moment. Like, are you bleeding? No, okay. So, stress may be interpreted by the brain as something we can tolerate and work through, or as something that is overwhelming. How many of you sometimes, when things get overwhelming, your brain goes somewhere else? That's normal. It's the way our brains work. God made our brains. And it's part of that coping skills that we learn as children, how to handle stress. Stress may be interpreted by the brain as something we can tolerate and work through, or as something that is overwhelming. Our set points for that interpretation are largely in place by early adulthood. So if you had a very chaotic, abusive, neglected childhood, can you see how those set points for interpretation may be different from those who didn't? Real quick here, note the comparison on healthy child brain and brain and brain of a child from severe abuse and neglect. damaging effects of toxic stress and cortisol hormones released into the bloodstream and brain relative to brain functions is what you're seeing. So these are PET scans of 2 3-year-old boys showing the bioactivity in the brain. On the left is one healthy one, and the one on the right is actually from a Romanian orphanage with massive degree of neglect. You see the difference? It's literally changed their brain. So this isn't just in orphanages in Romania. When there's abuse and neglect, it changes your brain. We'll talk about, it doesn't mean you're, forever cursed or never going to be able to function, because our brains do have something called neuroplasticity, which we'll talk about. But it does, especially if you're not aware. So people don't know this stuff. People aren't aware of this at all. I'm sure you work around, have friends, have family members that you know of that are more difficult to deal with or work with. So this is really cool, I think. So these are the best windows of opportunity in terms of early human development. The next slide, sorry. Yeah, I was like, nope, not that one. So for emotional intelligence, the optimal window of opportunity is from 0 to 2 years. And of course, that gives you a next best, but emotional intelligence is actually determined by the people you're around when you're just a baby. Those interactions, if they're safe and you feel cared for and your body is safe and your mind is safe, emotionally safe, then you can develop better emotional intelligence at those ages. Any of these surprise you? Any surprises when you look at them? I think music is interesting. 0 to 36 months, those first 3 years of life. Thinking skills, first 4 years. So, big question. What are your thoughts on the impacts of environmental effects on each individual generation, or how they could be passed down from one generation to the next? Have you heard of that? Do you think that it's just what you're experiencing now, or passed down, could possibly be passed down, or both? How many think it's both? Well, we'll be nice to you. Okay. Okay. Next slide. What is epigenetics? It's the interactions between our DNA and our experiences, or the environment, helps our genes to express via genetic switches. So epigenetics really means epi plus genetics, and it literally means above or on top of genetics. So it refers to external modifications to DNA that turn genes on or off. These modifications do not change the DNA sequence, but instead they affect how cells read genes. Next is a little video. DNA and genes are a blueprint for development. However, experiences, nurture, play a significant role in human development. Here we will discuss how nature, or genes, DNA, are expressed as a result of experience. We've talked about sensitive developmental periods when toxic stress has profound effects on human development, but these childhood times are also windows of opportunity for building resilience. After all, the developing brain is sensitive to all kinds of experience. By paying attention to sensitive developmental periods, we can do a better job protecting children and providing the kinds of challenges and supports that may remediate early periods of toxic stress and promote lifelong health and well-being, even when we work with adults. We have a collective choice. We can actively develop skills and accommodations that enable everyone to contribute to community, or we can continue our societal pattern of rejecting people when they have normal adaptive responses to childhood adversity. If you remember one thing from this information about brain development, I hope it will be that toxic stress can be hardwired into biology. Before we assume that a person's behaviors are a rebellious choice, let's think about the possibilities that adversity may be at the heart of the challenges we see. Now we're going to talk about the ACEs study just a little bit, or no, not a little bit. We're going to talk about it a little more than a little bit. But there we go. We've been talking about the effects of toxic stress on individuals. Now we're going to pivot. Get that? I put that in for my little cards there. Pivot. We're going to pivot and talk about the effects of toxic stress on the population as a whole. The field of epidemiology is where we're going to turn. Epidemiologists are scientists who study the origins of disease, disability, productivity, and health in a population. They help us to focus our efforts on issues and processes that will make the most difference for the well-being of everyone. We're going to talk a bit about a large epidemiological study about the enduring effects of adverse childhood experiences. Dr. Rob Anda and Dr. Vincent Felitti are the co-principal investigators of this, like we said before, the ACEs study. You can leave it right there. So the very interesting thing about this is most prior studies of the health and social effects of childhood abuse focus on a single type of adversity, such as sexual abuse. The ACEs study broadened the picture to include multiple types of childhood stressors. In addition, the study measured a wide array of health and social problems. This is how the ACE study expanded the knowledge into a broader public health perspective. So this ACE study is unique. I want you to understand this. Is unique because it provided the potential to understand how multiple forms of childhood stressors can affect many important public health problems. Design of the ACE study began in 1991. In 1994, the CDC provided funding to conduct the ACE study at the Department of Preventive Medicine in San Diego. More than 17,000 adult members of the Kaiser Health Insurance Plan completed a survey about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, health behaviors, disease risks, and disease, mental health, substance abuse, and other health and social problems. Their ages ranged from 19 to 94 years, but I know that the median range was in the 50s. Study participants were generally well-educated. This is interesting. So this is back in the 80s and the 90s. The study actually began in the 1980s. Dr. Anda had it's not in this, I'm adding for you. Dr. Anda had they had an obesity clinic. And he had a client that was a woman who was over 400 pounds. And they were able, in the course of a year, little less than a year, to help her, without surgery, reduce her weight to 136 pounds. She was ecstatic, excited, healthy, doing well. Of course, she had diabetes before. Her diabetes disappeared. A lot of health problems disappeared. Doing really great for about 3 weeks until a male coworker propositioned her at work. And Dr. Anda says that in the course of 3 weeks, she gained almost 40 pounds. And in record time, she was back over 400 pounds. In less time than it took her to get the weight off. And he was stunned. He had done this, they had obesity clinic. They were familiar with obesity, but stunned. And he says that the biggest problem is that they took her at her word that her obesity, diabetes was the problem. That wasn't the problem. She began, the day that he propositioned her, began her sleep eating. She actually would get up and eat in the middle of the night. She had been sexually abused as a child. And even I find this, I know if you work in psychology, it's like, yep, that's normal. But it is fascinating. Even her job. She was a nurse in a convalescent center, and the person who abused her, by the way, was her grandfather. So she was a nurse in a convalescent center where her job was to keep old people in bed. They realized a week and a half later when they had another patient come in and something similar happened, that they had something was different they needed to look at. And they began actually developing the ACEs study through that. So just a little extra there. So the study, though, was done among, just a minute. The participants were generally well educated for this. So as you hear this, these were mostly middle class, well educated people, these 17,000. They actually sent the survey out or asked over 50,000 people to participate, and they got a little over 17,000 that responded. But they were generally well educated. Most had attended college, and only 6% did not have a high school diploma, as compared with 13% of the U.S. population. They're predominantly white middle class, had access to some of the best health care in the world at the time. These study participants are still being followed to this day to assess the relationship of ACEs to causes of death, incidence of disease, health care utilization, and use of prescription meds. Okay, this next slide is going to explain a little bit about what ACEs are. This slide shows the 10 categories of adverse childhood experiences that were studied. Now, there are more, definitely more, that can be considered. But these 10 are what they found the most common. The first group are indicators of household dysfunction, which include growing up with substance-abusing household members, alcohol or drugs, parental separation or divorce, growing up with mentally ill household members or caregivers, witnessing intimate partner violence, specifically having a battered mother, or criminal behavior as evidenced by having a household member imprisoned. 3 forms of childhood abuse were studied: emotional, physical, and sexual. And 2 forms of neglect were included: emotional and physical. As you can see from the percentages on the slide, ACEs are common in this middle-class, well-educated population. So can you imagine what they look like when you have a population that isn't as white and middle-class? I think there was 10% of the study were Black. Hispanic was included with the white, but it was very low, so you know. At the end of this presentation, we'll have copies of the ACEs questionnaire for you to take with you if you'd like to discover your own ACE score. We're not going to do that here. When I originally took the training for this in 2018, they gave us the questionnaire, and that really was a major aha moment. So there's something though I want to share with you. If you take this questionnaire, again, our brains are so interesting, and they work hard to protect us all our lives, whether they need to or not sometimes. So when I took the ACEs questionnaire myself first time, and when I was going through this, I was thinking my family on my dad's side, my family on my mom's side, all of a sudden bells are ringing. Everybody died early of all these different diseases, and you're going to hear more about this. And I'm like, oh, now that makes so much sense. So much sense. And the reason that I had even gotten into looking at ACEs was because of somebody that I loved who I realized was disassociating from conversations and arguments and not remembering anything and blaming me for stuff that did not happen. And this had went on for decades. And all of a sudden, light bulbs were going off in my head, and I started doing some research and came upon ACEs. And at that time, Michigan just happened to be doing there was a big grant given for people to be trained in ACEs. So I took it. But I didn't look at me. That's what I'm saying. I didn't look at me. And our brains tend to, sometimes, some of us, go into denial. So I took the ACEs questionnaire. Just a couple of them. I'm like, hey, pretty good. Phew. Okay. If you know anything, the fact that so many in my family everywhere died early and there was all this trauma in their backgrounds, somehow I skipped it, just me, was not going to happen. But I was in denial. So when I took it again a couple years later, after some self-awareness and a lot of life stuff going on, my ACE score is an 8 out of 10. So there's 10. We'll explain this in just a minute. But went from a 2. Now, how can I do that? Did I just come up with stuff? No. My brain was keeping me protected from it. Didn't need to, but it thought it did. Okay. Because adverse childhood experiences are so highly interrelated, it did not make sense to look at how single categories of ACEs influenced health and social problems. Instead, Dr. Anda and Dr. Filiti developed an ACE score. The score is simply a count of the number of categories of ACEs that each person reported from 0 to 10. You can go to the next slide, sorry. Each category counts as 1 point in the ACE score. So, if a person experienced physical abuse, no matter how many times, and what we do, it says, or what the severity of the abuse, but it really means like if you were kicked, punched, hit, pushed down by parents or adults or whatever, that is what's considered physical abuse. Your ACE score is 1. If the person experienced physical abuse and had a substance abusing parent, the ACE score is 2, and so forth. Think of the ACE score as a measure of the childhood biological stress dose. It's your dose of biological stress. As the ACE score goes up, on average, the exposure to the developmental effects of toxic stress increases. In this illustration, you see that only a third of people in the study had an ACE score of 0. 16% had scores of 4 or more. Adverse childhood experiences are common and they tend to cluster. ACEs are a hidden burden in the study population. Next is a video. And this is about, actually I don't know if you've seen, anybody seen this movie? It is a documentary movie. It's amazing. It's called Resilience, the Biology of Stress and the Science of Hope. Anybody seen it? Okay, I'll have resources at the end on a slide you can take pictures of. And this is actually, this one, I can't remember. I think it's either free on Amazon, it's on my resource list, or it's IMBD. So you can find it, but we're going to look at this, watch this. Share one word that describes how you are feeling. Just one word. I know, the first time this happened to me, I really had to think about it. I'm like, was there a word to express what I'm feeling? That's one word. Thank you. Excited is mine. So now we're gonna do a mindful practice here. If I can get everybody's attention, we're gonna take a couple deep breaths. We've covered a lot of information, and it may be personal to some. For others, you're thinking of your family members or whatever. So we're going to take the first breath we're going to pay attention to the process of breathing. So take in a deep breath. And when you take a breath, wait a minute, don't take a breath. Don't hold it that long. When you take a breath, the importance of that breath is how long you release it. It actually helps cleanse toxins from your body. So 1, 2, 3. Our second breath, I want you to let your body relax. Your third breath. Now, I really would like people to do this, even if it feels weird. This one might feel weird. On this next breath, it's okay if it feels weird. On your next breath, I want you to say, we're going to say this out loud, Body, you are safe. You do not have to be afraid. You are okay. Take a deep breath in. Out. Say it out loud. Body, you are safe. You do not have to be afraid. You are okay. Now, these are good to do before you transition to or from being at home at work, when you feel triggered by something, when you have the urge to check social media, which tends to be how we handle, how we cope with stress. So, thank you. How does everybody feeling now? Relaxed? Like, want a nap? No, just kidding. Okay. People who report higher ACE scores are more likely to have health and social problems. In fact, as the ACE score goes up, the percentage of people with health and social problems also goes up. We call this a dose-response relationship. You know dose-response, like the more gas you put in your car, the more miles you can drive. That's dose-response. In this case, where there is a higher dose of adverse childhood experiences, the higher the percentage of people with health problems. I did forget to tell you, if you have a question at any time, please feel free to raise your hand. I say that halfway through the presentation, but it's all good. Next slide. All the data slides from the ACE study that I'll show you today are formatted in the same way. Along the bottom, the horizontal axis are the ACE scores, from 0 on the left to 4 or more on the right. The vertical axis, up and down, is the percent of people who have the disease or condition. So, in this first set of bars on the far left, we see the percent of people who became regular cigarette smokers by age 12 goes up as each level of the ACE score goes up. Does everybody understand what they're seeing? If you don't, it's okay, and if I need to explain to somebody, totally cool. Sometimes I have to look at these more than once. In the second set of bars, well, we already said that. No, I didn't. In the second set of bars, we see the percent who were smokers as adults also goes up in a stepwise fashion as the score goes up from 0 to 4 or more. People with higher ACE scores have increased risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. About 4% of the people with an ACE score of 0 developed COPD, while more than double that percent of people, about 9%, with an ACE score of 4 or more developed COPD. ACEs lead to early onset of smoking. Why do you think that is? Why would a high ACE score or adverse childhood experiences lead to early onset of smoking? Okay, hanging out with the wrong crowd to be accepted. Anybody else? What was that? Coping, yeah. And what does that, what do you get from a puff of cigarette smoke? Yeah, you feel less stress. So it's a coping, for sure. Anxiety, depression, difficulty concentrating and smoking. ACEs can result in depression and anxiety. Nicotine can reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. So the benefit of nicotine in reducing these unpleasant emotions might help to explain why knowledge of health risks due to smoking are not enough for some people to quit. Actually, I watched a video, I can't remember if it was one of Feliti's patients, Anna's now, but this patient was a woman, and she was average weight, sometimes underweight, but she smoked a lot. She started with having a lot of health problems, having to go on oxygen and such, and so she quit smoking, but got very obese, and she says herself, though, because she recognized it, she felt safe with the higher weight. She felt safe, and she wasn't willing to give it up. She ended up on oxygen. Then there was another guy who he knew why he smoked, that it was a coping mechanism. He had quit other drugs, but he continued to smoke, knowing what it could do to him. but it helped him cope right now. Now we can begin to anticipate why ACEs, the next slide please, are related to certain behaviors and social conditions. Here we see the risk of becoming an alcoholic increases sixfold from an ACE score of 0 to a score of 6. And ACEs affect relationships. People with higher ACE scores are more likely to marry an alcoholic. Think for a minute about these indications and how ACEs tend to be transmitted from one generation to the next. Next. Depression is the leading cause of disability in developing countries. Here we see that the risk of depression increases for both men and women in a dose-response fashion as the ACE score goes up. And we know that through the pandemic and after the pandemic, it's even higher. So these slides were created before the pandemic, just so you know. ACEs are held in the body, leading to mental, physical, behavioral health problems in adulthood. Some of those problems are unintentionally handed to the next generation. Becoming an alcoholic, marrying an alcoholic, and suffering from depression are a part of the intergenerational transmission of adverse childhood experiences. Does that make sense to everyone? Can you see how that, yeah. The next slide. Okay, there you go. One of the strongest relationships seen in the ACE study is between ACEs and the risk of suicide attempts. People with an ACE score of 4 have almost 20 times the risk of suicide attempts as people with an ACE score of 0. I know these are some wow statistics. Yeah.
Did everybody hear the first bit? And they say they have no childhood trauma, or they don't believe, anything was bad in their childhood. Does that mean that they have had childhood trauma that they've suppressed in their conscious mind? Can you make an assumption that there was something? Or
so I'm going to hand this off to the doctor here, and he will answer that question.
So my initial thought was potentially, but not necessarily, because you could have been abused in college or something like that that could have caused the recent suicidality or something, or gone through a divorce or something. But if it's someone that doesn't have a trigger like that, I would imagine there's a lot more that they overlooked, kind of like Vicky did back in the first time she did ACEs. So you would have a hunch, but in a lot of things in our practice, you want to be careful not to jump on the hunch too quickly, because then they'll just run from you. So you'd say, well, that's interesting, and then you sometimes just have them talk about other things in their childhood, and then it'll cue it, like, oh, tell me about your 5th birthday, and they go, oh, actually, I didn't have a 5th birthday because my grandma was dying of COPD, and it traumatized me. So sometimes they don't realize it's a trauma, and you got to be careful how you probe it, because if you probe too fast, they'll run.
Right.
Yes, you want to be careful, but my first initial thought was potentially, for sure.
Suicide doesn't come out of nowhere. Like maybe the root of that question is it possible that someone could be suicidal and there actually be no thing back that led to that?
Well, it's complicated because are you suicidal because for whatever reason you don't feel accepted by your other peers and you feel kind of fragile by that? So sometimes in the teenage years, they'd say they're stressed out, and then they go, well, I have no other way to cope with it, so they maybe have coping skills. So, and sometimes suicides or even suicidal ideation could be accidental. They didn't mean to. They're just kind of struggling. So at the same time, too, I think that without trauma or adverse childhood experiences, you could also have genetic issues. You could have serotonin issues or norepinephrine issues. So there's a combination of nature and nurture. But if there's chronic suicidality, you want to figure out some of those triggers that may have happened, and again, you got to be careful how you approach it, because if they're not ready to go there either, and you go there too fast, they're going to run. Does that answer your question? Okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Annie. Yep. Okay. So next slide. Here is a list of some of these I'm going to go through real fast, and so if you have questions, I'm going to ask you to hold them, and we'll talk about them. But I want to get through everything because it's all important. Here's a list of some of the health and social problems documented by ACE study publications. Because ACEs have a powerful impact on many health and social problems, the ACE researchers concluded that ACEs are the leading cause of health and social problems in our nation, and this should lead to thinking about prevention. So when this, just so you know, I am stuffing a lot into 2 hours, and that this is usually longer so that it be able to have more discussion and questions and that kind of thing. But I wanted you to have this information, and I think it's very important as leaders in our community, as business owners, as employers, as entrepreneurs, as whatever you do, this is important for yourself, for the people that you communicate with, you work with, you live with, friends. So, next slide, please. So ACEs are common. ACEs are highly interrelated. ACEs have a cumulative impact that is captured by the ACE score. And people with higher ACE scores are more likely to have multiple health and social problems, some of which increase the odds of their children having high ACE scores. The discoveries about the effects of toxic stress on the developing brain provides biologic plausibility for the ACE study findings. So this information makes a strong, did I already say this? Okay. Just all of a sudden, like, what did I say? For a strong case for concluding that the relationship between the ACE score and health problems is a cause and effect relationship. No, I didn't say that. So also to some of your questions and more about like the science behind it, you just Google ACEs and or adverse childhood experiences, and you will get a litany of stuff even from our own state. There's stuff from our state. There's from other states. So there's lots of information that will be able to help you with that, a little more than I have here. Next slide. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, breaks ACEs risk factors into 2 categories: family or individual and community risk factors. This slide is an excerpt of the CDC's stated risk factors that may be most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I do have a couple slides with that in it. So, families experiencing caregiving challenges related to children with special needs during the pandemic, that was huge. All of a sudden, these kids did not have the supports they needed. And can you see it? If you have it all worked out, you're a parent, and you have your own ACEs, but you, with your life, have been able to cope and manage. You have a special needs child, they're in school, you know, they have the supports, you have your life in order, and then the pandemic hits. And not only is this going to affect your special needs child, but you now are triggered and having to take care of your special needs child without all of those supports. And lots, not just children, but parents and adults really struggled during the pandemic. So high level of parenting stress or economic stress, families with isolation from and not connected to other people. How many of us, like, not being able to connect with people was really hard? Like, I'm good for a few days. Then I'm like, people, please. Any people? Okay. High conflict and negative communication styles. If you have high ACEs and you've always been able to manage, everybody being home all the time, all of a sudden, that's going to come out. Attitudes accepting or justifying violence or aggression. Community risk factors. Communities with high rates of poverty and limited educational and economic opportunities, high levels of social and environmental disorder, unstable housing where residents move frequently. Communities characterized by families living in areas that frequently experience food insecurity. Next slide. Several ways in which ACEs may be exacerbated. Social isolation, job loss, school closures, intensification of pre-existing risk factors. And that's, I think, what it did for a lot of people, especially adults, parents, intensification of pre-existing risk factors. Kind of exploded. Next slide, please. So, how do we put this all together to make a case for understanding ACEs as powerful pathway to health and well-being? Not just all the negative. Now we understand that ACEs are common and have a strong cumulative impact on the risk of common health and social problems. Preventing ACEs and their intergenerational transmission is the greatest opportunity for improving the well-being of human populations. In fact, the ACE study team and ACE interface believe this is the greatest opportunity of our time, perhaps of all time. So this is a lot of negative stuff, but it's always been there. Now we know we can do something. This slide shows the percentage of various health and social problems that epidemiologists estimate are caused by ACEs. The calculation that is commonly used to do this is in public health studies called population attributable risk. This is displayed as a percentage as an oil spill on this slide. The percentage of a problem coded by the oil spill represents the percentage of each problem that is potentially preventable by preventing ACEs. The percentages are quite large. In fact, the high percentage on this chart are rarely seen in public health studies. The cumulative effects of ACEs reflect a powerful opportunity for prevention, no matter if you are working to prevent heart disease or cancer, end homelessness or hopelessness, or improve business profitability, or in your business working with, your employees. As we align a portion of our work around a common goal of preventing the accumulation of ACEs and moderating their effects, we will reduce all of these problems and many others all at once. The ACE study provides us with straightforward information about the consequences of toxic stress during childhood. This scientific research gives us powerful information we can use every day to improve health, safety, prosperity, and longevity. But the ACE study isn't a detailed roadmap of services or programs. It is an invitation for us to be pioneers. How many love your pioneer kind of person? That's me, yep. This news is simply too important to wait for someone else to design a detailed roadmap. With God, I added that because this is a Michigan ACE initiative, so from the state, but with God and through our collective knowledge and action, we have the power to shift the dynamics within our own families, communities, and societies that lead to high ACE scores. Can you imagine if those who love Jesus and follow him did more, knew this stuff and did more? We should be leading the charge, honestly, with all of this. But you don't know what you don't know. So that's why I'm sharing. You can watch this little rubber ducky as I talk. Neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experiencing or following injury. The importance of neuroplasticity can't be overstated. It means that it is possible to change dysfunctional patterns of thinking and behaving and to develop new mindsets, new memories, new skills, and new abilities. Your brain can change, but you've got to know in order for your brain to change. And honestly, you have to be willing to do some work if you want your brain to change. And if you want it to change for yourself, for your family members, for those around you. I love this poem. Together, we will create a brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we all have caused wounds. In this space, we will seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. So it doesn't matter how old you are. You have the right to start and grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. The space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. I love that. But it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. Isn't that awesome? I really like that. It's okay if you don't like it. I love it. When people hear about the ACE study findings, they often ask about resilience. People get excited about the notion of resilience, in part because it reminds us that our supportive actions matter. Our desire for resilience leads naturally to a search for ways to help families and communities. 3 protective systems interact and guide positive adaptation. These powerful systems are individual capabilities, attachment and belonging with caring and competent people, and protective community, faith, and cultural processes. What do we know about individuals who do well despite adversity? We know that the 3 protective systems are nested. People do best when they are living in thriving families and communities and work environments. If you are constantly triggered in your work environment, what are you going to look like when you go home? We can help one another to develop personal attributes that help us all weather life's storms. Personal attributes like positive view of oneself, which only happens, especially if you have a lot of ACEs, that only happens with some work. You're not just going to come up with a positive view of yourself if you were told you were a dirtbag your whole life. So it takes some work, but it's possible for you to change your brain and change your thinking. Personal attributes like positive view of oneself, self-efficacy, and self-regulation are all discussed at length in my resilience presentation. So there is another one that we're not doing today. The second protective system we can nurture is belonging. Next slide, please. Many people talk about the importance of people in their lives, people who recognize and encourage our unique talents, interests, and strengths. Relationships with caring and competent people are vital contributors to resilience and recovery. Sometimes this message gets shortened and only includes caring relationships. Like you hear, as long as a child has a caring relationship with an adult. But competency requires learning new skills and practicing safety in all of its forms when relating to people who are hardwired for survival in a dangerous or unpredictable world. So it's not just somebody who cares, but it's somebody who's capable and willing to learn and grow or has the ability to help you. People who have difficulty with emotional regulation, picking up social cues, problems with addiction and family bonds, and other consequences of developmental trauma can be challenging friends and neighbors, employees and coworkers. Do we all know somebody like that, or maybe that's us? Relationships that provide security and belonging will become the norm as we learn and improve our skills and competencies to be relevant and helpful during times of stress and challenge, as well as during celebration and rest. So these 4 resilience factors make a difference, and they're even more powerful as we layer them up, as we have more of these. So feeling social, emotional support, and hope. This is not for just children, it's for adults. Having 2 or more people who help, 2 or more people who give concrete help when needed. Community reciprocity, yes. In watching out for children, intervening when they are in trouble, doing favors for one another. How many, when you're a parent and you have nobody else to help watch your kids or to make sure that you're having to possibly put them with somebody that's not safe so that you can work, so you can have money to support them and keep them so they're not taken from you? Social bridging. People reach outside their social circle to get help for their families and friends. I don't know about you, but in poverty, when there's generational poverty, this is less likely to happen because you don't reach outside your social circle. They don't understand, so they think. Next. So this next slide, the next few slides, I'm not going to talk a lot about, but you're going to find really interesting for work environments. Poor mental health, more than half of last month with low support and hope. So people with 0 ACEs, of course, it's lower. They feel they have less mental health issues, even if they have low support and hope. So maybe they don't have much support. They don't have a lot of hope. But notice how poor mental health increases the more ACEs. Next. So, poor mental health more than half of last month with high support and hope. See how that reduces? Poor mental health majorly reduces when they have high support and hope. Next slide. And this affects work. So think about these people at work, which is what we're talking about next. Unable to work with low support and hope. How many of you have retention issues at where you work? Or people not coming in? ACEs and ability to work support. Unable to work with high support and hope. See how that reduces? If they have high support and hope, you're able to go to work. Next. If we've decided to dramatically improve health and safety for this and future generations, we must foster thriving communities. Fostering thriving communities is about empowerment. It's about investing in the people who have the most at stake so they can be the expert leaders of their own community's change. Now, I want to caveat here. When we want to be careful about telling people what to do and how they should do it. But asking questions and allowing people to advocate for their own change. And you might find that their ideas are better than yours. It's about investing in the people who have the most at stake so they can be the expert leaders of their own community's change. As we invest in community capacity, we can systematically provide education about neurobiology, ACEs, and resilience, so local people have a common language for cross-sector and multidisciplinary work. And this is being done in some places. I have the resource at the end, but this is, if you've not seen this movie, it's called Paper Tigers. Anybody seen Paper Tigers? It's documentary. It's amazing. It's about a high school with high drug use, gang affiliation in the area, and recidivism was terrible, and they began to implement some techniques around ACEs and totally changed the culture of the school and the kids and the recidivism and the graduation rate and the hopelessness, actually, of the kids. So that, I think, is on Amazon Prime. I have that resource at the end also. Building community capacity is about helping people learn, manage, and improve their efforts systematically, and about providing flexible funding, state-of-the-art education, and direct supports that help mobilize everyone who wants to help. Public and private, it shouldn't just be people that are in charge that want, to get to help, just an FYI. Or people that have the monetary funds or are successful. It should be more than just that, so. Public and private partners that foster thriving communities learn from these communities and celebrate exceptional results from their work. To learn more about capacity building processes, we look to communities that have changed the way people work together to solve tough problems and had stunning success. Success doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey that intentionally builds new capacities and supports healing and prevention. Now, I will say that even during the pandemic, children and youth who had parents who were more resilient, had social connections, parents that could help themselves, the kids did better. So in any trauma or toxic stress, if the parents help themselves and are able then to help the children come out much better with less effects of stress. How to increase resilience in children. As stated above, resilience is actually the process of utilizing one's protective factors to navigate successfully through a stressful situation. For example, a child may go through the loss of a grandparent, which is very painful. With the support of caregivers, ideally parents, and other social connections, friends, the child can grieve appropriately and will return emotionally and physiologically to a place of stability after a period of time. The critical piece here, obviously, is the presence of protective factors. Life will certainly provide the opportunities to walk through stressful circumstances, but parents and other support systems, including pediatricians, must ensure that the child has the protective factors in place to prevent long-term negative outcomes. These protective factors include parental resilience, social connections, concrete, tangible help in times of need, parent knowledge of child development, and social and emotional competence of the child. I am almost done. Anybody need a break, a mental health break? Raise your hand if you need a break. Everybody good? Okay. It's okay if you do. Totally good. Community capacity development. This is where I get excited. So, each successful community has traveled that journey differently because each community is unique. Each community has their own culture. But communities that have reduced major social problems, reduced the percent of young people with high ACE scores, and improved key factors for resilience do use similar processes for achieving better results. They use these processes to work over time to build new capacities for helping one another to thrive and new capacities for aligning resources and systems so they achieve better results. So I encourage you to look this up. So in Washington State, a system of community public health and safety networks call these communities high-capacity communities. So if you look up Washington State and ACEs, they have tons of support. What they have done in Washington State is amazing. The process they have used since 1994 is called General Community Capacity Development. It's a public health approach to solving interrelated problems by improving people's connections, their shared responsibility, and the collective impact of their efforts. Community capacity development, and what capacity is the ability to do more, to absorb more, to grasp more, and then use it. So that's when I prayed this morning. I prayed that God would open our capacity for hearing and absorbing this. Because it's a lot. And we increase capacity the more we know, and then are able to do more in our communities, if that makes sense. Okay, community capacity development puts into place a 4-phased interactive process to nurture development of healthy and productive adults regardless of the circumstances into which they are born. It is an approach that invites all members of the community to shift the ways we engage with one another on a day-to-day basis, improving people's connections, shared responsibility, skills, and efficacy. This approach increases the collective impact of services and neighborhood initiatives by aligning efforts around common purpose. The 4 phases in the process are leadership expansion, coming together around issues of importance to the community, learning together, and results-based decision-making. How many of you notice that people that are leaders tend to have certain personalities and whatever, and everybody else doesn't, a lot of times don't get to be leaders because of how they handle things or the way they, whatever. This changes that. What if they just need some supports to be a good leader? What if they've been overlooked? The process is powerful because success in one phase propels success in the next. It generates a virtuous cycle with the power to improve population health and uses all the resources in a community, including its people power. Imagine the powerful prevention strategies we could employ if we could clearly see the cascade of factors that shape life course. One systems change expert named Julie Grevstad charted an important part of that picture in Pierce County, Washington. You can look this up also. She used risk assessment data from youth served by the juvenile court, I think this is awesome, to learn that high ACE scores, early suspension, early academic failure are a highly predictive pathway to incarceration for youth. Once the data revealed such a clear picture, she was able to convene a different kind of community conversation. By the way, did you know that they look at prison growth or the need for more prisons based on 3rd grade reading levels? Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but they can, it's predictive. If children are not safe at home and not safe or successful at school, why are we surprised when they knock at the door of the court? With that picture, school personnel and neighborhood residents understood their juvenile crime prevention roles differently. The adults now hold themselves accountable to intentionally and systematically generate safe and welcoming social and academic environments that don't exclude children who have experienced traumas. I think that there's a way that we can use this in our work environments also. This approach led to changes in the Pierce County juvenile justice system and reduced recidivism among youth served by the court. Because the Pierce County work was a part of the statewide system of community networks and networks that were providing community-based education about ACEs to judges, probation officers, prosecutors, attorneys, and the general public. Findings from Ms. Grevstad's work have informed improvements in the justice and education systems in many communities across the state. There's possibility for change. Supporting healthy community processes that respect cultural traditions and values is a high leverage activity. Just as a rising tide lifts all boats, a high capacity community lifts all beings. People living in high capacity communities are less likely to have high adverse childhood experience scores, less drug and alcohol abuse, less depression, and serious and persistent mental illness, and fewer problems in school and work. Change is up to us. There's a predictable pattern to transformative change. It begins with discovery and communication, which you're doing today, which leads, kudos to you, by the way, for being here, which leads people to clarify their values and thinking. With new knowledge and new habits of thinking, people change the actions they take in everyday life. The collective actions of many people shape a new reality that is ratified in organizational and policy change. The truth is that people create a new reality long before new laws are passed. Change is up to us. It is shaped by our thoughts, our conversations, the way we relate with one another in relationships, in families, and in communities. And to bring this to a close, we have a fun video here. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you may have seen that video before. Mark is passing around the survey for everybody to fill out at the end of this. Be honest, please, on it. And I actually have to report back to the Michigan ACE Initiative people for this presentation. But, and then you can hand them to Mark as you leave. He'll be out there. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being brave. It was a tough topic. Thank you for being brave even though you knew the topic. That's awesome. You know, that video that we just watched, there are lots of children who've never had that. And that's why they grow up in chaotic environments that never told they're loved. Their bodies never, notice how that baby responded, that baby's body responded to dad talking calmly. She was newborn. She stopped crying. And then when he said, "I love you," she opened her eyes and calmed even further down. That even if we have not had that in our lives, God is able to do that for us. He is the Father who loves us. So, these are some additional resources. Next slide. So for you business owners and employers, I met with several folks from Capital Area Michigan Works. I don't know, you know, but I work for Michigan Works, an agency up north. And so I got a hold of the Capital Area Michigan Works and talked to their staff and how I like to vet all my resources, just so you know these are vetted. So Business Resource Network, Nick Chafin at the Capital Area Michigan Works. I encourage you to get a hold of him. The business, and there's also a paper out there when you leave. There's not that many, so if you want to take a picture of it, feel free. Business Resource Network, I created one actually for my Michigan Works up north. That was my role before this one and how I became a life coach and all that, working with employers and their employees. But there's a lot of support available for employers and their employees with the Business Resource Network. There's a flyer out there. Business services at Capital Area Michigan Works. Now, if you've never utilized Michigan Works, there are tons of resources that their business services team have for employers and entrepreneurs. This is Terry Sand. She's amazing. She will get back to you. That's her email and her phone number. So the videos and the movies that I suggested, that's how you get a hold of those. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's an app, I have it on my phone, cbtthoughtdiary.com. You can actually download the app, CBT, it's just Thought Diary. I just Googled I put it in the Play Store, Thought Diary. It improves your mental health with cognitive behavioral therapy. It's actually a really cool app. Michigan Works Association, this is another resource for employers. You can learn about associate membership and their training schedule. They have sometimes some amazing, and they're having more and more because I have an amazing friend that's now in charge of the training at the Michigan Works Association. And she is developing a lot of trainings that will not just for Michigan Works, but for employers. So for a low cost, you can be an associate member and get reduced costs for trainings for your staff and for your employees. And I'm gonna tell you, that's another thing that's available through the Business Resource Network, through the business services team at Michigan Works. Training and helping people become leaders, and sometimes they have no other resources once they start working because they're busy, they have families, they are not going to get further training, typically. You can help provide further training for their emotional support. One of for communication, if you've got communication issues and you've got supervisors who are struggling with communication, just anybody on your team, they have a communications training called Our Community Listens. If you Google Our Community Listens, you'll see what an amazing nonprofit that is. And it is a training that I've had lots of communications training. How many of you have had you've been through lots of different communications training? This is the best, bar none, by far. I use it all the time. And you can get the training through Michigan Works. So to find a therapist, you can go through Psychology Today, betterhelp.com. Talk to my husband. He doesn't know me. And a lot of times people here at church will they'll ask him, we've had people do this, will you see me? And it's a conflict of interest, even with Lara, supervisor body of, state of Michigan. They don't like that. It can be an issue. So he tries to keep work and his personal life separate. He does a great job at that, by the way. Suicide hotline. It's 988. I actually was thinking about that the other day. I'm so used to 911. I'm like, what 3 numbers was it? Not that I needed it, but I'm like, if I needed it, I couldn't remember. So you can also text GO to 741-741. And in addition to those, there's a couple that I couldn't fit on here. If you've never read this book, The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. For your own self, for others, it's an amazing resource, but be ready. You're not going to be able to read it all at once. It's going to be chunks, and God is going to use it. He will. I guarantee you this. I don't know if this man is necessarily Christian. I don't think so, but God will use that book to actually do growth and healing in your own heart and life. So, and then there's the little card that you have in your packet, Pivot Professional Consulting. It's executive coaching with a trauma-informed lens for companies, employers, and managers, HR teams, business and ministry leaders, entrepreneurs, and career changers. That's me. Next slide. And so just want to say thank you. And thank you to all these different organizations and people that helped make this presentation available, possible.